Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you in the sunny city of Aalborg, where the days are full of sun and also the nights are very bright, as we all who have arrived yesterday and those who has arrived today will see, for the 8th Inspire conference. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Konrad. I'm head of the Governance, Information and Reporting Unit at the Directorate-General for Environment of the European Commission, and I will be the moderator of the opening plenary session of the 8th Inspire conference. First of all, I would really like to extend our warmest thanks to the Danish colleagues, in particular City and University of Aalborg, for their hospitality, for being able to be here in this beautiful venue and enjoy ourselves for the Inspire conference. Now, following the 2 days of a technical workshop, we now proceed to the opening plenary that will set the scene for the next 3 days. And the main title of the Inspire conference this year is the governance. There are 2 reasons for it. It's a 2014 edition, the 8th edition of the Inspire conference, and there are 2 important events happening or developments happening this year. The first thing is that being put in place in 2007, the regulatory framework for the Inspire directive has been now completed. So we are moving smoothly from the legislative to the maintenance and implementation phase that will take us well up to 2020 to accomplish. And this year is also the year where, like its usual custom, the legislation, including the Inspire, is being reviewed to assess its fitness for the purpose. And indeed, we are working these days and this year together with our colleagues, together with Joint Research Center, the Environmental Agency, together with all stakeholders, together with the public that has provided an extensive input to a public consultation on a midterm review report on the Inspire. So these 2 things, are quite important as the scene setter for the conference, and they explain that now being right in the middle of process, both in terms of the instrument being put into place, as well as in terms of the first experiences being currently under evaluation. And I should say that the report that I have been talking about will be presented by the European Commission next year. So it's a good moment to actually also open the debate on the whole mechanism, how the Inspire is governed, and also to take a backward look back with the view to a future, to discuss also not just what we have done, where this has led us to, but also what is ahead of us. And without being further, in a way, preempting the future speeches by our speakers and the panelists, let me just go directly to a very pleasurable duty of introducing the 3 members of or 3 speakers of our opening plenary session. And I'm very glad that the invitation to set the scene for the 8th Inspire conference was accepted by Mr. Henrik Studsgaard, who is a permanent secretary of the Ministry of Environment of the Kingdom of Denmark. Thank you very much and welcome. Then I would like to also greet my director, Mr. Aurel Ciobanu-Dordea, who is the Director for the Implementation, Governance and Semester at the European Commission. And last not least, and I'm now, as you can see, following the order in the agenda, we are also very lucky to have a guest who is outside of Europe and who will share with us, I hope, experiences from the United States of America with the building of the geospatial infrastructure, information infrastructure, and that's Mr. Ivan DeLoatch. So, welcome, gentlemen, and without any further pause, I would like to hand over the microphone to Mr. Studsgaard. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and dear everybody, a warm welcome here to Aalborg, to this Inspire conference. I must say that we are very glad in Denmark that we can host this conference. In Denmark, we think the Inspire initiative is a very central initiative to develop e-government. We think it has some very central principles for dealing not only with geodata, but also with other types of data. I will start in 2006, where the Donau River broke its banks and caused severe damages to homes, farmland, and natural assets in the central and eastern parts of Europe. The flooding made it clear that we need a common foundation for sharing spatial data across the EU. Because floods don't stop at borders, and neither should, of course, the spatial data upon which we build our strategies for adapting to climate change. We need to share spatial information, and this was founded with the principles for Inspire, which was defined and set in action short time after the 2006 floods. I would say that the need for climate adaptation hasn't faded in the intervening years. For evidence, we can just take a look to the recent floods in the Balkan region. We are being repeatedly challenged by extreme rain and rising water levels in our seas, our rivers, and our lakes, and sometimes even in the water table beneath us. Therefore, I think it was an exercise in due care when the European Geospatial Community formed Inspire and launched it almost 10 years ago. And the need for your contributions to making Inspire a real and valuable resource increases every day. Because even though Inspire was intended to strengthen the work with climate change and environmental protection across our borders, its cooperative approach and its data content have both proven to be highly valuable in other sectors as well. I'm talking about agriculture, transportation, nature conservation, property administration, emergency preparedness, health, education, and so on. Our challenges are cross-boundary in nature, and our solutions should be so too. In other words, Inspire and spatial data are digital raw materials for strengthening our digital governance and our e-government. These lead in turn to higher efficiency and economic growth in the EU. I'm not a politician, and this is not a political speech. I speak to you as a civil servant. My work is to serve my minister, the country, the EU, and of course, all our citizens. And I think the best way that we can serve citizens is through cooperation across our borders and across our political lines and platforms. Inspire uses geodata to describe reality as it is. No room for interpretations nor disagreements. Only hardcore facts to enlighten us and help us to cooperate. So the strength of Inspire is double. It links the EU together, and at the same time, it reinforces digital governance across our borders and sectors. Inspire also has a very highly valued side effect. It can create new knowledge, new solutions, and new value. The immense quantity of data that relates to location can be used wisely and digitally intelligent. The only limitations, I think, are the ones of our minds and our imagination. Every single of you here today has a special responsibility to help fulfill the potential of Inspire. You are key players in using geodata in your own countries and across EU borders. Our countries may have different histories, different cultures, and different political landscapes, but we share many of the same challenges and preconditions. We are all meeting growing demand for economic growth, efficiency, innovation, and open government. In Denmark, Inspire has acted as a catalyst for developing e-government. The principles of standardization, creating access, and optimizing the use of data have been fundamental to the Danish strategy for good basic data for everyone, a driver for growth and efficiency, which was launched last year. As a part of the strategy, we released a wide range of spatial data that everyone can use without the barrier of a price tag. We want to make the public sector more efficient and to boost economic growth in the private sector. In the private sector alone, we expect the basic data program to yield 13 million euros new growth each year. Since we released the free geodata in January of last year, their use have grown enormously. Annual access to our data services has passed the 1 billion mark. New companies have been launched based on new free data, and with them, a lot of jobs have been created. We have also seen greater efficiency in the public sector as a result of the free basic data. And again, I would say that we are talking about Inspire data and also Inspire principles that have provided both the foundation and the driver for developing these solutions. As I said earlier, the only limitations to using free geodata are in our minds. And I could give you a long range of different examples where geodata creates greater efficiency or value in some other sense. But I know this conference is passing by in 5 days, and I know that you will have plenty of these examples during this conference. So instead, I'd rather present to you an unforeseen initiative that has led to an alternative use of our free geodata. About 2 months ago, we released a 3D version of our whole country in the computer game Minecraft at a scale of 1:1. You have probably already heard about the project. We received quite great press coverage around the world. In short, we decided to use Minecraft as an alternative platform for showcasing and distributing our national geodata, and we did this for 2 reasons. First, to demonstrate one of the many, many possible uses of geodata. Like I say, testing the limits of our imagination. Secondly, we released our data in Minecraft because it's an accessible way for our schools to tap into the value of geodata, a tool for teaching mathematics, geography, history, and art in a world that the students already know, I think, very well. But those aren't the points I want to focus on here. The point on which I want to focus is that it only took us about 80 hours to convert the geodata covering the entirety of Denmark into Minecraft format and release them into the internet. 80 hours. And how can that be possible? This short time frame was only possible because of our geodata are already standardized, quality assured, and accessible according to the INSPIRE principles. In other words, we can create new value based on geodata, INSPIRE data, and the INSPIRE principles without having to break the bank. Also in areas and applications far beyond the obvious. As I said in the beginning, INSPIRE is a key enabler for good digital governance. It can also generate growth and underpin greater efficiency. I'd like to urge you all to keep up the good work. You carry a big responsibility on your shoulders to release the potential in these principles and in this program. You hold the keys to unlock fantastic potential and to contribute to a better environment, more welfare, and new economic growth through geodata. Dear everybody, thank you for your attention, thank you for listening, and I would like to wish you a continued, valuable, and inspiring INSPIRE conference. Thank you very much.
Well, the Permanent Secretary, thanks a lot for your words, because these were not just a general endorsement of the INSPIRE, but also providing us a number of quite concrete examples of the benefits INSPIRE implementation in Denmark has brought to the public sector, to your ministry, to the public sector, but also as well as for the business, leading to a job creation. So it seems to be win-win on all the sides, and I'm sure that the midterm review from Denmark will be considered in this rather positive tone. With that being said, I would like to invite our second speaker, Mr. Aurel Ciobanu-Dordea. Aurel, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here with you in this indeed sunny city of Aalborg for this 8th INSPIRE conference, and I'm here for several reasons. First of all, because even if I would not be a relatively newcomer in the area of environment, I took up my responsibilities at the middle of January this year. This would still be an interesting opportunity to find out more about what is going on in the framework of INSPIRE, what is going on with the stakeholders in the member states, in the contacts between public administrations, scientists, but also economic operators. This is always interesting, and I'm here, first of all, to listen to what you have to say, to your examples, to the difficulties that you are facing, to the solutions that you think are suitable to handle these difficulties, to solve these difficulties. And I'm here also to listen to those suggestions that you want to make to policymakers, and not the least to the European Commission. How can we help you and support you and the member states in delivering better results when implementing INSPIRE? I am also here in order to confirm the importance that the European Commission, and in particular the Directorate-General for Environment, attaches to the INSPIRE system, to the instrument as such, to its implementation, and to its suitability for delivering concrete results that helps the public, but also public authorities, also scientists, also economic operators, non-governmental organizations, in understanding and managing better the challenges that are around us. And indeed, Inspire is about managing data, not only about environment. These data can be used for several purposes, and it is important that we all work for the same purpose, to make this an instrument that delivers according to the expectations and that helps the design and the implementation and monitoring of better public policies for everybody, for all citizens, for all economic operators, and for the common good of our societies and for the European Union as a whole. And in this support for Inspire, the European Commission Directorate-General for Environment is not alone. We are indeed working since quite a number of years with our colleagues from the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. We are also working with our colleagues from the European Environment Agency, which happens to be based in Copenhagen, in Denmark. And we work well in a good cooperation, in good understanding, and for all of us, this is an important endeavor, and we will continue to work to support it. The instrument has been set up in 2007. We have, as Robert mentioned, struggled a little bit to make available all the implementing rules for this directive to be able to function properly, but in the same time we have already worked with you, with all the stakeholders, including by meeting annually in these conferences to share the understanding and the experience from the ground with you, and to understand better from you what are the challenges, and we will continue to do so in the following years. But I'm also here for a third important reason, and here I join somehow the Permanent Secretary Studsgaard to talk to you about the importance that Inspire indeed has for shaping better public policies and implementing better the public policies that we agree upon. The importance of Inspire for good governance. And I think if we keep in mind the ultimate goal that our effort has, we will be able to see the finality that is not an ending point. It is also a process, but we are able to understand better where we are going and why we are making the efforts that we are making right now. So I understand very well that Inspire is an instrument not about collecting data, but it is about soundly managing the data we already have or collect in the future. Data which, in turn, is fundamental for providing us with the information we require for protecting our environment and using our planet's resources wisely through sound decision-making. Such infrastructure is not only useful for environmental purposes, but there are many positive spin-offs in other policy areas, a subject about which we no doubt will hear more about in this conference. However, let me focus now on making sound decisions, and this is precisely what good governance is all about. And I would stop on a number of underlying principles for good governance and try to illustrate these principles with concrete examples of how Inspire and the conclusions that we can draw on the basis of data Inspire should make available in an intelligible way would work. First of all, good governance should be effective and efficient. No matter on what level of government you are active, decisions should be taken that make the best use of the available people, resources, and time to ensure the best possible outcomes. Let us take the example of environmental impact assessments, this being one of the responsibilities within my portfolio as director within the Directorate-General for Environment of the European Commission, but this being also a relatively frequent issue and sometimes a challenge for different economic operators or even policymakers when they develop projects across the European Union, across our member states. If INSPIRE allows those that need to prepare an impact assessment study to more efficiently find, access, and use the data they need to establish the baseline and to monitor the project impacts as it goes along, then I'm convinced we would already have made a big step forward. In particular, because we all know from recent implementation reports of the environmental assessment legislation how difficult and sometimes inefficient this data retrieval and sharing still remains. In addition, what that also would entail is that INSPIRE allows us to save money, an argument that we cannot certainly reject in these times of austerity. And this is also not only about austerity, this is also about efficiency and making the best use of public and private money. Secondly, good governance is also participatory and transparent. People should be able to follow and understand how and why a decision was made, what information, what advice, what consultations decision makers considered, and which regulatory requirements, when relevant, were followed. Indeed, in addition to this, the Member States and the European Union as a whole have joined also the Aarhus Convention on Public Information, Participation, and Access to Justice. In a nutshell, anyone affected by or interested in a decision should have the opportunity to participate in the process for making that decision. If INSPIRE helps in providing information and accurate information, then this can provide clarity about what is at stake, can dispel some concerns of the public, and can also help the developers of the projects to craft them in such a way in order to cushion the concerns and, at the end of the road, can ultimately increase the legal certainty for the developers. We will all gain from this. Public economic operators, public authorities, experts. In a way, the use of reliable data and of reliable conclusions based on transparent data serves sound business and public decisions. This may well be one of the most important governance principles for INSPIRE to support. INSPIRE would help to clearly link all relevant information on the state of the environment, on the impacts perceived, on the degree of compliance with applicable legislation, and the measures taken to address the issue firmly on a map for all to see, consult, and deliberate. It goes without saying that once you know the risks you are exposed to, you will be more inclined to exercise pressure on those who are meant to represent you or to represent your interests, or even to alter your own behavior as an individual, and accept better to support the costs of decisions to be made. Now, let me also say that transparency makes a lot of sense if understood as supporting accountability. And good governance is also governance that is accountable. Accountability is a fundamental requirement of good governance, and indeed all levels of government should be able to explain, report, and be answerable for the consequences of decisions they make on behalf of the community they represent. Such explanations, such reporting, be it within a country, between administrations, towards the European Commission, to the European Environmental Agency, to international organizations and conventions, you have been all confronted with this or affected one way or another, and this is indeed sometimes a challenging task. We know from our experience that this is not straightforward to bring together all the data to produce the information we need and to timely report to decision makers and stakeholders, or to different participants in the decision-making process. Not to forget that the information and technology solutions we implement to facilitate this task require considerable efforts as well. For some of us, it may look easy, but I am aware that it is not that simple to have computers talk to each other. If indeed this INSPIRE infrastructure would allow this data to flow more efficiently between organizations which all have to deliver one or more pieces of this information jigsaw, then this will also alleviate the burden of reporting and would help accountability. I mentioned people in relation to good governance, and this is how I would like to conclude my intervention this morning. Ultimately, good governance is not a purpose in itself. It means serving the public interest and serving the needs and interests of the people. And when speaking about people, we of course think about all our societies, all our citizens, but we think also at a somehow smaller scale about you, the people that have been involved more or less from the outset in the definition and implementation of this ambitious project that supports good governance, INSPIRE. And I would like to thank all of you and all of your colleagues that are probably in your respective capitals or in your respective entities, even if they are not in the capitals of our member states. I would like to thank you for your commitment, for your involvement, and for the work that you are pursuing relentlessly. I would like to sound an encouragement for you to continue with this endeavor, and we will be working to support you. We will be working together with you in order to deliver the commitments that we undertook at the beginning of this adventure, that no longer looks that much as an adventure. It starts to become a reality. Thank you very much. I wish you a good discussion these days in the framework of this conference, and I look forward also to work with you in the months and years to come. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Aurel. Indeed, it is self-evident, obvious, and therefore hardly visible, sometimes forgotten or neglected fact that the sound management of environmental data is at the very core, at the very basis of the environmental policy making or of the environmental policy enforcement. And it was very clear from his speech that we are in the Commission very well aware of this fact, and we are also very well aware of the crucial role INSPIRE plays in the sound management of the environmental data in Europe. Now, one of the inspirations for INSPIRE was also the US policy for the spatial data infrastructure, and there has always been a quite close dialogue and cooperation between the two sides. It's therefore really a great pleasure to introduce as the third speaker in this opening session, Executive Director of the Federal Geographic Data Committee of the United States of America, Mr. DeLoatch. The floor is yours.
And thank you very much. It's absolutely a delight to be here with you this morning. We have a long-standing partnership and have collaborated with Inspire over the years, and watching you as well in terms of what you're doing in managing and governing and providing that accountability for your spatial data infrastructure. I will say my presentation this morning is designed to encourage and not discourage you, because I'm going to take you back a while and talk a little bit about the past in terms of what we've done with the spatial data infrastructure in the U.S., as well as what we're doing presently, and then talk a little bit about the future. I'm sure you all are having some of these same conversations today as we think about the evolution of geospatial information and technology globally, not only within your countries, but throughout the world. So, with that, I'll have to go manual. I will say that before I start, I want to thank my good friend Aurel Ciobanu-Dordea, as well as the program committee for the invitation to be here today. It's an absolute delight, as I said earlier. We've worked with folks in Inspire, as well as folks in Canada with GeoConnections, as well as our colleagues in Australia, as we think about this very important endeavor of establishing a spatial data infrastructure. As you heard from the previous speakers today, there's a lot of value in having spatial data available for many, many uses in our countries, and it's starting to become even more prevalent today, not only for government, but for the private citizen. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about some past coordination activities, a little bit about the brief history of my organization, the Federal Geographic Data Committee, talk about some of the present efforts and current policies that we're currently working under, and then a little bit about some future activities, and speak to our new strategic plan that was released last December. So we're going to take you back in a time machine, back within the U.S. Efforts started many, many years ago in using geospatial information back into 1890, if you could believe that. That's when Executive Order 28 was established, primarily directed at establishing the U.S. Board on Geographic Names with President Benjamin Harrison back in those days. Following that, that evolved into Executive Order 943 in 1906 when they established the U.S. Geographic Board, which is the early underpinnings of the FGDC. Primarily to expand the mandate and to avoid duplication of work and improve the standardization of maps. I mean, some of the same principles that we're dealing with today. And then this evolved even further in 1919 with the Board of Surveys and Maps, which was created primarily to expand the mandate and to assume the previous responsibilities of the board, of the Geographic Board, and then primarily to establish a central information office to furnish all map surveying materials as well as other resources for government operations. Back then, centralization was, I think, a good idea, but as things evolved over the years, we've come to understand that that's almost impossible to do today because of the proliferation of the use of geospatial information across many agencies and also many states in the U.S. But it's also began to really focus on using a map as a public service. So, very interesting concept and things that evolved over the years. Then eventually, the underpinnings of Circular 816, which is the policy construct that is utilized in the U.S. to govern our work, here began to describe the responsibilities of the federal agencies with regard to coordination and surveying, and this is the earliest governance structure, I would say, that was established for governing activities for geospatial collection and dissemination in the U.S. And this was revised in 1967, primarily due to the establishment of the Office of Management and Budget in the United States, which is the entity in the Office of the President that governs our resources. And then finally, about 1970, and then again in 1990 and 2002, the current circular that we operate within the OMB Circular 816 was put into place, and it was revised again in 2002 in the Bush administration, and then more recently, we issued a supplemental guidance back in 2010 in the Obama administration. So as you can see, this quite a bit of history here in the U.S. that has been the underpinnings for the work in geospatial activities for our government. Then lastly, currently the status of the circular, which is a policy that that we operate within. And this is one of the things that we're currently evaluating, and we're looking at Inspire in terms of what they've done and really developing a regulatory construct and mandating it by law. So one of the things that I'm an advocate for and have been pushing over the last 8 years is to move from a policy construct more to issuing a law that sort of governs the work, primarily to get at that accountability principle that we heard about this morning as well. So I want to talk a little bit now about the FGDC and just a quick brief history. As you saw earlier, we currently operate under the construct of OMB Circular 816, which formally established the committee itself. And the committee is comprised of representation from 32 ministries, or we call them departments or agencies in the U.S., but they're aligned with the ministries in Europe. And then second of all, to strengthen that circular, back in 1994, Executive Order 12906 was established. And this year is the 20th anniversary of that circular. And it really called for the development of the national spatial data infrastructure. And this really began due to the development and the establishment of the digital age, and we start moving to digital maps and using information more electronically with the evolution of the internet, as well as with computers as well. And then 2002, again, we revisited the circular, but also the E-Government Act of 2002 was established, and in there, we were impacted by that law with Section 216, which established the FGDC as an entity for developing geospatial standards for the government. Again, good governance is very important, as we also heard that theme this morning, and within the FGDC, we have a steering committee, as I mentioned earlier, that has representations from 32 agencies, but also we have an executive committee that is comprised of the 7 agencies that have the most significant mission responsibility in the U.S., and those agencies are Department of the Interior, our Department of Homeland Security, our Department of Commerce, and Department of Ag is a few examples. And then we have a coordination group that meets on a monthly basis that carries out the work of the FGDC governance. And these folks are typically the practitioners or experts throughout the agencies that meet on a monthly basis to develop a set of recommendations that are then considered by the steering committee in terms of the impact and issues that are being addressed as part of moving many of the policies forward. So I want to talk a little bit about NSDI and its evolution. I mean, we've heard some of that already this morning. I'm sure you'll continue to hear that throughout the conference this week. You know, the NSDI, at least in the U.S., a much stronger role now by the stakeholders. It's not only the federal government, but now significantly impacted by the work that's happening with our states, but more significantly by the private sector. Over the last 10 years, the private sector has a significant role now in developing and collecting data, but also providing those services and analytics that are used to make decisions. There's a significant increased usage in geospatial information, as many of us know, and significant high demand, primarily to deal with a lot of different issues and challenges that governments have, but also the public sector. And now it's becoming an expected commodity. It used to be a desktop type operation, but now geospatial information is now proliferated throughout much and all of the work that we're doing. We also realized that as part of this evolution that the spatial data infrastructure needs to be bigger, stronger, and much faster. The demand is so high and its use is so vast that it's very important that we have the opportunity to share this information in a way that can meet that demand. And now, because of technology, there are a number of new mechanisms where smartphones are now able to utilize geospatial information, and The networks and the computer capacity is much greater and much faster now. And the applications are being developed, beyond our ability to keep up. And then last but not least, as we're hearing throughout government, the challenge of being more open, transparent, and also innovative in using geospatial information. So for us, we've had a progression of a number of FGDC initiatives over the years at the highest level from the Office of the President. Back in '92, it was the Geospatial Clearinghouse. And then in '96, we started having more collaboration with different countries in developing the global spatial data infrastructures. 2001, there was another initiative launched in the President Bush administration called Geospatial One Stop. And then again in 2006, we established another initiative called the Geospatial Line of Business. And now today we're embarking on the new initiative that was launched by the Obama administration called the Geospatial Platform. And I'll share a little bit with you this morning about where we are with that particular effort. And then last but not least, the new concept of shared services is starting to take hold. The message here is that we've always had support and acknowledgement at the highest level of the value of geospatial information in government, and is beginning to now to take hold in all aspects of the work that we do. So as many of us know, the idea and the concept of open government is proliferating throughout government, primarily due to the direction from the Office of the President back in 2009. There was a memorandum that he had signed that guides the work of the federal government to start sharing more information, make more information available on the internet for all of our citizens. And also, open data is another initiative that was launched by the Obama administration. In fact, the executive order was released in May 2013 that directs us to make all data open and machine readable as a new default for government information. And then again, the open data policy, which is another memorandum that is guiding us to make the to manage the information as an asset, but also to make it available in a usable format. So as you can see, there's a lot of different guidance and direction that we're receiving at the highest level, primarily because the government and the President and the Office of the President sees the value in this information and making it available to all of our citizens. But there have also been a number of other government initiatives that are impacting us in terms of the geospatial community, public access to research results, which are requiring us to make the data accessible, citating the information, the open data policy, which I just spoke to a few moments ago, which are driven by metadata cataloging as well as standards, and Big Earth Data Initiative is another area that's beginning to impact the work that we do. And as you can see, there's just an opportunity here to support many of these activities in a way that's going to be productive. So our challenge is to try to balance the ability to meet these demands, but also to be able to conduct the work that we do on a daily basis. Climate, the cloud, another area of focus. As you can see from this particular diagram, we're using cloud capability to support the work that we do at all levels, from data collection to assimilation to manipulation, as well as to our ability to share this information at the highest level. And in fact, we're also using the cloud to support the work that we're doing globally with the Group on Earth Observations. So back in 2011, there was a call to action, we'd like to call it, and this was information that was in a budget document, which is important because typically when it's in a budget document, that leads us to believe that there are resources behind it to support the work. So due to that action, we were asked to move out and develop a new technology or way of serving up the technology that made it more user-friendly. But also the guidance here was to begin to manage our data and information as a portfolio. And by doing that, we wanted to identify those data layers that we felt were the most important and to focus our resources and prioritize on those data layers that we thought were most important. The call to action also wanted us to leverage existing initiatives, many of those that I showed you earlier, but also to improve the governance framework. And then to also work with our state and local governments and to address some of the requirements that they had as part of the spatial infrastructure. But then more importantly, this call to action was driving us to reuse the data and tools and architectures primarily to save resources and to increase the access to geospatial data. So with that, we embarked on this new initiative called the Geospatial Platform that we started the planning activities back in 2010. From that directive, we developed a geospatial roadmap. From the roadmap, we also developed a value proposition. And then finally, we were able to launch the website, I think 2011, 2012. So the message from this particular slide is that there was a progression of activities that led to the finalization of the platform, but also to show you that a lot of thinking and thought went into this process, and we believe that this is going to move us forward. And the platform is currently serving as our manifestation of the NSDI. So on the platform website, we have a standard web portal. We also have some geospatial features of interest, like maps and data, and also some tools to help developers and data publishers. And then we also have managed the content by organizations, or by communities, I should say. Some of those communities have to deal with their data communities, the A16 data themes, I should say. It also provides a mechanism for cross-agency collaboration, so many of the departments can work together on some common challenges. And it also serves as a storefront for some communities in dealing with disasters and other challenges within our federal space. And then also it provides communities for private communities as well for specific applications. This is the current website offering today. As you can see, I won't go through all of this, but my intent here is just to show you that it is trying to address a number of requirements that we've gathered from our agencies, particularly those that are looking for data, but also to provide them an opportunity to publish their data, but also to find and also to share information and data. The website also provides a catalog for those of you, the experts in the room. This is our ability to organize our information so the search and sharing can be conducted. We have a series of map galleries for maps that have been developed or produced from a lot of the data that's accessible through the platform and that have been developed by others and then republished for repurposing purposes. And here we're also establishing what we call a marketplace, which is an opportunity to have agencies as well as other state and local governments share investments in data. This is also an attempt to try to minimize duplication, but also provide an opportunity to leverage our resources. As we all know, our budgets are getting tighter, and opportunities like this will provide a mechanism to share that information and share the investment costs. The platform also provides a series of resources and dashboards for reporting purposes. Again, a tool that can be utilized to address accountability as well as good governance. And then again, it provides a series of featured maps and applications targeting specific issues that have been brought to the team itself. And one that we have just recently launched was on the Climate Data Initiative that the Obama administration released a few months ago in collaboration with our colleagues from Google as well as ESRI. This is a public-private partnership that are currently supporting the Climate Data Initiative, and the climate resources from the platform are being used as part of that process as well. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the future, specifically our current strategic plan, and some of the drivers behind that plan were the requirements from OMB Circular 16. And then recently, our Government Accountability Office, which is the investigative arm of our U.S. Congress, had conducted an evaluation of our programs back in 2011, and they developed a series of recommendations that are included in the report, the Geospatial Information Report here. Agencies need to make coordination a priority to reduce duplication that was released in November 2012. And one of those recommendations in that plan was to suggest that we develop a new strategic plan or revise the plan that we had in place. And we hadn't done a strategic plan in about 3 or 4 years, so it was quite timely for this recommendation. But also, we have a National Geospatial Advisory Committee that we utilize in the United States to provide recommendations and advice to us. And one of the outcomes of their deliberation was a paper that they developed called Toward a National Geospatial Strategy that we utilize to help develop that plan. Then also the requirements behind digital government and that strategy of the 21st century, the Open Government Directive as well as the Open Data Policy were other key drivers for our new plan. Here is a more detailed information about that recommendation. Some of the key components that they had suggested would be a new vision or to revise the vision of the NSDI, look at a series of goals and objectives to carry out some of the challenges that we've been having over the past several years, and also develop a series of actions. But more importantly, the suggestion would also to develop a series of performance measures so we can track to see how we were actually progressing and moving forward on these activities. And that has been very helpful over the past several months. In developing the plan, we embarked on a series of stakeholder activities to ensure that we had buy-in from all of the folks in our community, specifically our stakeholders from state and local governments. We also had a lot of conversations with our federal partners from all the agencies to make sure that that the results of this plan was one that they would see benefit in and make it easy for implementation. We also had we organized a series of strategic sessions with key stakeholders from the private sector as well as from academia and nonprofits, and had a series of meetings and brainstorming sessions in developing of the plan itself. A series of leaders forums also was conducted in 2011 and 12, and this really resulted in some new thinking and fresh ideas in terms of how to continue to support the national spatial data infrastructure in the U.S., and many of those ideas have been captured in our plan. This is just the results of those activities. As I shared earlier, was the publication of our strategic plan in December of last year. And in terms of the future state of the NSDI, we're looking to create a network of resources and services. Some of these key principles are still relevant today, those from the past, which is to facilitate discovery and access in the application of these resources. We wanted to make sure that we leveraged shared standard-based services so we did not have to sort of minimize duplication, but also provide some core capability. Then to also, as we all know, begin to use real-time feeds and sensor webs as we move forward with the new NSDI. Here's the shared vision statement. I won't read all of this, but I think it's important that there are still some key concepts there that from the past that we've had to continue to embrace and to include here. Over the years, I'm sure as you know, the technology and the people are very key to ensuring a successful NSDI, but also it's important to have those data and standards involved. And I think the biggest challenges over the years have been with the cultures and people and not the technology. I think the technology has been pretty consistent. But for us, the collaboration and coordinating across all the agencies has been our biggest challenge. The plan includes 3 goals, and these are 3 of the areas that we're focusing on. The first is to develop capabilities for national shared services. The geospatial platform is an example of that. The second is to ensure accountability and effective development and management of our resources. We heard that from the previous speaker on the importance of good governance and accountability, and we want to focus on that. And then last but not least, the convening of leadership of the national geospatial community is very important. This is where we're able to get fresh ideas and new thinking. And we're also redefining the role of the federal government in our national spatial data infrastructure, primarily due to the proliferation of private sector entities who are doing a lot of this work as well. How do we balance that and how do we utilize that capability? And these are a series of objectives for the first goal. I won't read all of those, but the message here is that there are a series of key objectives that we'll be tracking and executing on over the next 3 years. And we purposely only developed this plan for 3 years because this technology changes so rapidly that even 3 years may be a bit of a stretch in terms of ability to manage and keep up with the evolution of geospatial information. Two key objectives for Goal 2. We'll make a point here that there's a lot of data available and a lot of data being developed and collected. Our intent here is to identify what are those key data sets that we want to manage as a portfolio. Currently, we have about 16 data themes that we've identified with about 200 data sets associated with those. And currently, as I stated, those will be the data sets that we'll focus on in the near term. And then lastly, we cannot underestimate the value of communication and ability to share with all the individuals who are part of our strategy and all the individuals who are part of developing the National Spatial Data Infrastructure and providing a mechanism to share that information and to do exchanges. And we can never underestimate the value of education and of also raising the awareness of the value of the NSDI, especially in today's space where there are a number of issues and opportunities to utilize the technology. So in terms of implementation, we're taking a series of steps. We started back in January. This is occupying a lot of my time and energy, but it's been a great, having great success so far. We've convened meetings with our executive leaders at the highest level to begin to plan and execute, but also to provide the resources for our NSDI. We have a series of champions that we've identified that will have the responsibility for overseeing this activity, but also a number of individuals who are part of the action teams to actually carry out these responsibilities. And we're also working with our stakeholders as well, as they have a role as well in developing and executing the plan. The future of NSDI, I think, is great. I think you're going to hear some of that again this week within your own communities. I think as we move forward, mobile technologies is going to be an area that's really going to have an impact. Crowdsourcing is another area that's going to have a significant impact and a change in how we do work and how we implement the NSDI in the United States. And also in terms of how we make this information available and how do we collect this information is going to be another key area of focus in using different technologies to do that. I think there's never a shortage of challenges, especially environmental challenges. In the U.S., we're really focusing a lot on climate change and some of the disasters that we've been addressing over the past couple of years, the flooding, tornadoes, and always there's a challenge during the hurricane season, which is coming upon us in the next month or two. And then lastly, there's an ongoing demand for geospatial information and from our decision makers. They're beginning to use this technology themselves on a daily basis to govern, but also to make decisions on some very critical issues that they're confronted with. And so with that, I will thank you for your attention and appreciate, again, the opportunity to be here.
Thanks a lot. It was very interesting to see, at least for me as a non-expert, that the legal approaches to the spatial data infrastructure in the US are not as old. They are basically 20 years ago. And the overall activities that are being undertaken by the Federal Committee are very similar to what we are doing here in Europe, and they neatly coincide with the digital society and e-government development. So I think it's a very encouraging example of the spatial data infrastructure being implemented on such a large geographical scale in the United States of America. Now, before closing this session, I would like to make a small change. We haven't envisaged in the program question and answer session, but I think that given the level of our three keynote speakers, considering that they will need, at least 2 of them for sure, will need to leave us for the next part of the conference. I thought it may be, and I got their agreement, it may be interesting for you as an audience to be able to put 1 or 2 questions so that we still are able to spend the 10 minutes or so that are dividing us from the coffee break before the first plenary session. So may there be any interest from the audience to ask question to any of our panelists? Please, the floor is yours. Over there. If you could shortly introduce yourself, please. No. I'm afraid as this is an ad hoc arrangement, you will need to come here to get the microphone.
Thank you very much. My name is Andy Ritter. I'm a scientist. I work in atmospheric science. And my question is about quality. Several speakers very rightly underlined the importance of quality assured data. And I was wondering if you think that INSPIRE integrates a proper notion, a proper definition of quality. Is for scientists, as you know, accuracy is defined as the closeness to truth. And I have not seen such a way of defining quality within INSPIRE. There is a notion of quality which is essentially based on the precision of the way you represent the data, especially on a geographic standpoint. But this, don't you think that integrating something similar to what the scientists use, which is based on the idea of being close to truth, would not be a very important thing to do in order to have sound data to base good governance and policy making?
Thank you very much. I must admit that this question seems to me to be rather technical for the opening plenary, but perhaps our US colleague can share his view on how they deal with the quality issues.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do so. You know, I didn't speak to it in my presentation because I was trying to keep it at a much higher level, but you cannot underestimate the value of the quality of the data. I think that's why the documentation, the metadata, you know, the things that we dearly love are important, and having a documentation and ability to understand the information, especially for its intended use, is very, very important. Not only for scientists, but also for decision makers as well. I think one of the things we're also challenged by in this new evolution of geospatial technology is, in the social media aspects of it all, is how do we evaluate that data, you know, for its intended use, and what sort of documentation is required, and how do we validate information that's gathered from the social network. So quality is absolutely important, but also the quality as defined for this intended use is very important as well. And of course, you know, you want the most accurate information you can get for whatever intended use that you're using that information and data for.
Well, thanks for the question and thanks for the answer. Aurel?
I'll venture on this slippery slope without having the expertise that the colleague that asked the question has. So I don't have the scientific expertise, but looking from a policy making perspective, I would say that first of all, we need to understand very clearly what we mean by quality and quality requirements. From my perspective, and I am maybe in a particular situation where I have several responsibilities, some of them legal, some of them policy related. I would say that quality has several dimensions. It can mean the granularity of data and the accuracy of data, how much the data really reflect what is going on. But quality means also, from my perspective, you may say scientifically it might not be very correct, but from my perspective, the coverage of the whole of the European Union is also a quality issue. The relevance in the light of different standards and obligations of information is also a matter of quality. This is my reading of this concept. Certainly, there might be others more accurate. I think we need to have an agreement, but not following a debate that lasts for years, about what quality means and to see what can be done. In other words, if we have a problem and we cannot fix it, we have to take a bigger hammer. I'm not thinking, of course, about a regulatory intervention or something like this, but we need to devise another solution if we all agree, both the managers of the system on the ground and the policymakers agree that there is a problem with the quality. This is what I can comment from my perspective. But I think that it might be even useful if we hear a more detailed comment from the person that asked about quality and why, because your question seems to hint at a problem related to the quality. Why do you think quality is a problem? I don't know if you want to address this now. You will have a presentation.
I will have a presentation tomorrow in the quality and testing
So this
session.
paves the way, your question paves the way towards the presentation tomorrow. Maybe the permanent secretary wants to...
I don't know the Inspire directive in a very great detail, but I think the question is quite interesting. And as Mr. Aurel said, what's quality? What's good quality? And my angle will be the consumer angle. I think one of my experiences is that you in your sector has to be very good listening to the consumers. What do they need? I think a key issue for success is demand. I am asking for a lot of information, data, and so on for decision making. And I say to my agency, well, you're coming from maps. Interesting to have a map. A lot of organizations, companies make maps. I'm interested in data for decision making, for operating the public sector, and that's something else. So I think we have to ask at stage one, what are the data going to be used for? And when we have asked that, we can define which data is interesting and what quality is interesting. I think this is very, very important. And I must say, even though Dr. Konrad was so kind to say that we are relatively successful with Inspire in Denmark, I will say we have a long way to go yet to have total compliance between demands, the demands of the public sector and the work done by your kind of agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. I even perhaps a little bit coming from the technical perspective, I think we have survived quite well. And it basically shows that what is really needed is that whether you call it data or information, that it is fit for purpose. And it needs to be fit for purpose for the policymakers, for the people that are ensuring that the law is being applied on the spot. And it's quite important. I think the Inspire is one of these exercises that brings together all different elements of the data management, so that at the end of the day we end up with something that is corresponding to the user requirements of the national, local, as well as the European policymakers and the others. I'm not going to risk another technical question at this moment, you will understand. So let me just conclude the opening session just by a small question, which I think is a question that is not going through my head, but will interest several of us. We have seen, and the midterm review of the INSPIRE clearly shows that what we are talking about is a multi-annual, multi-level, multi-stakeholder harmonization process of the data management. And these harmonization or similar harmonization processes and approaches, if they are basically presented by the European institutions, are frequently met with the mixed reception from the member states, and they are not always necessarily most popular. But it seems that in the case of the INSPIRE, and also it has been confirmed by the public consultation that has been conducted in the context of the report, there seems to be, of course, a lot of technical issues concerning the development of the whole construction, but there hasn't been much of a criticism of, let's say, the excessive regulation or the excessive harmonization. And it seems that the INSPIRE fits the needs of most of the stakeholders. And I just wanted to ask Permanent Secretary for his account. Why would he think that the INSPIRE in Denmark is flying as smoothly as it is flying? If you could perhaps say a few words about that as the concluding remark to this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I would say from my perspective, I think the INSPIRE journey in Denmark has taken place in 2 stages. In the beginning, only the agency of survey and cadastre understood what it dealt with. No one else. It is very technical. Just look at the implementation protocols. No one understands. I have been in several meetings where very engaged, very dedicated people from our agency tried to explain what's the idea of INSPIRE. And I would say it was a very hard challenge, both, I think, to explain, but also to understand. That was in the beginning, but luckily we had a very engaged staff in our agency who worked very actively with communication, involvement, both in the ministry but also in relation to other ministries. I would nearly call it a PR campaign which was made. And slowly, we began to understand the vision, the idea, the good principles. That was stage 1. Stage 2 began with even more globalization, high attention on competitiveness, efficiency, and thereby also by accountability. We couldn't just tell each other nice stories. Well, what's the effect? What's the documentation? And when you begin to talk this language, you have to have information, good information, and have it in an efficient way. You have to calculate effects. You have to have, as Mr. Aurel said, accountability in its highest degree. And that made a demand from other ministries, from our own ministry, to have these accountable data. And I think today we don't need to explain very much what this is about and so on. As I told you early on, the INSPIRE principles is a foundation not only for dealing with geodata in Denmark, but for dealing with e-governance. So I can say that we have been rather successful in implementing the idea, which is broadly recognized and accepted today. So, and I will also say that this was in, you could say, a government perspective. We also see that in a democratic perspective, the citizens have very high demands on information and transparency, and now also fast information. Thank you.
So I would say, so far, so good. We have had an opportunity in the opening plenary to hear and witness Danish, European, as well as the United States perspective on the spatial data infrastructure and the practical examples where it benefits different stakeholders. I would like to thank to all three panelists for their introductory speeches, as well as for the engagement with the questions from the audience. And I believe we still have a few minutes before the plenary session starts for a little coffee outside of the room. Thank you very much for being with us, and thank you very much for your interaction. Have a nice day.
Short remark related to the next plenary. It of course starts then half an hour later. So you're all invited to come back at 11:30 for the first plenary. Thank you very much.